Dear all viewers, you are listening the Alpha King love story. In that story, you will enjoy lot of thrilled, love, and more interesting ending. Before starting story, please subscribe my channel because your one like and subscribe means a lot to me. And after it, please share your thoughts on comments. And if you like the story, so share it with your circle as well. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Forgotten Scent. Rain, that was the first sound of every day. A cold, endless whisper against stone. 10 years, 10 winters, 10 seasons of silence. This was my world. A tower above the cliffs, a cage for a ghost the world was told had died. They called me a danger, a curse. They said I was unworthy, so they locked me away here, where the sea's roar drowned out my name. Once I had a name, Saria of the Frostwood Pack. Once I was promised. To him, to Cassian, the Alpha King of the Iron Blood line. I remember the night he rejected me. Under a moon the color of blood, his voice was colder than the steel that severed our bond. I, Cassian of the Iron Blood, reject you, Saria of the Frostwood. You are not fit for the mark of a king. He didn't even look at me with hatred. It was nothing, an emptiness that hurt more than any blade. After that, my wolf, she shattered, a silent scream inside a breaking cage. The council said my sorrow was a poison, so they brought me here, to this forgotten place, to be forgotten. They thought the silence would kill what was left of me. They were wrong. It just made me a creature of echoes. Every day I traced the cracks in the walls. Every night I listened to the wind tell stories of a world that moved on without me. My hair, once dark as a raven's wing, had turned the color of frost. My eyes, which once held the gold of my wolf, were now pale and tired. I was 28, but I felt centuries old. But tonight, the rain felt different. It carried a tremor, a rhythm I had not felt in a decade, and a scent. It hit me like a physical blow, sending me stumbling to the narrow window. My hands, thin and scarred, gripped the icy bars. Masculine, wild, midnight pine and crackling storm fire. It was distant, tangled in the rain and the mist of the valley far below, but it was unmistakable. My wolf, silent for so long, stirred. A faint, pained whimper deep in my soul. No, it could not be, not after all this time. The ground began to tremble, not from thunder, from hooves, dozens, hundreds, a relentless, approaching drumbeat, the sound of armor, the scent of raw, unchallenged dominance, growing stronger with every pounding heartbeat. Cassian. The Alpha King was coming, but why? Why now, after 10 years of silence? Why here, to this place of shame? Lightning flashed, illuminating the cliff path. For a second, I saw them, a dark river of wolves and riders, moving with a single, terrible purpose, coming for the tower, coming for me. My breath caught, a sharp pain in my chest. I pressed my forehead against the cold stone. Please, I whispered to the uncaring storm. Anyone but him, not now. But my wolf answered with a single mournful thought that echoed through my entire being. Mate. Down in the valley, Cassian rode at the head of his warband, fury and a ghost of a memory driving him forward. 10 years of war, 10 years of a crown that felt like a chain, but nothing had erased her. Her scent had haunted him, a faint trace of wild honey and pine in the wind, a ghost in every campfire, a shadow in his dreams. He'd been told she died in exile. He'd almost believed it, until tonight. On the hunt, the storm had shifted, and there it was, clear, undeniable, cutting through the rain. Her scent, not a memory, a living breath on the wind. His wolf had howled inside him, a sound of such violent, desperate recognition that it nearly brought him to his knees. She was alive, and she was here, in the one place he had never dared to search, the Tower of Sighs, where traitors and forgotten things were left to rot, his sin standing in stone against the cliffs. He clenched the reins, his jaw a hard line. He had rejected her to secure his throne, to end a war before it began, a strategic, cold decision. What was one Omega's heart against the stability of a kingdom? Now he knew the answer. Everything. Her heart was everything. Inside the tower, I heard the heavy door at the base groan open, a sound I hadn't heard in years. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, echoing up the spiral stairs, each one a hammer on my soul. I backed away from the window, my bare feet silent on the cold stone. The lock on my door, untouched for a decade, scraped and turned. The door swung inward. Lightning split the sky behind him, framing him in a blaze of white and shadow. Cassian, the Alpha King, filled the doorway, taller, broader, carved into something harder by war. His armor gleamed wetly, his hair plastered dark against his skin, and his eyes, those piercing silver eyes, glowed in the gloom. They found me, and the world stopped. He froze. The storm outside seemed to hold its breath. My scent hit him, wild honey, rain-soaked pine, and a deep, aching sorrow. It was the same. After 10 years, it was exactly the same, just heavier. It punched the air out of his lungs. Saria. My name left his lips like a prayer he'd forgotten, a broken, reverent sound. My voice was a dry rasp, unused to speaking. You have no right to say my name. He didn't move. He just stared, as if I were a mirage. They told me you were dead. A bitter laugh escaped me. It sounded strange to my own ears. Sometimes, I whispered, I wished I was. The silence between us was a living thing, thick with years of pain and betrayal. The rain drummed on the roof, the only rhythm in the stillness. Then his scent flared, dark and dangerous. His wolf was close to the surface. Who did this? He growled, the sound vibrating in the small room. I wrapped my arms around me. I did, I said softly. The chains were theirs. The prison, I built that myself, to keep the world safe from me, and to keep me safe from you. He took a step into the room, then another. I didn't retreat. A strange, ancient pull held me rooted to the spot. 10 years, he said, his voice low and rough. I can still smell your fear and your heart. Tears, hot and furious, finally spilled down my cheeks. I didn't wipe them away. You lost the right to feel my heart the night you broke it. He flinched as if struck. Outside, thunder roared its approval. Inside, the scent of our past, of love, of rejection, of a bond that never truly died, burned in the cold, damp air. Our eyes met. Alpha and Omega. King and prisoner, hunter and haunted. The storm had broken outside, but a different, more terrifying storm had just begun right here. Chapter 2. Echoes in the Stone. The torch in his hand guttered, casting frantic shadows that danced across the walls like terrified spirits. This tower, my tomb, was breathing for the first time. It breathed in dust and old fear, and breathed out the scent of him, Cassian, of storm and iron, of regret that hung in the air like smoke. He took another step. The flame hissed as a drop of rain fell from his armor. My scent, sharpened by a decade of loneliness, seemed to detonate in the confined space. I saw it hit him, a slight widening of his eyes, a barely perceptible shudder in his shoulders. He remembered. After everything, he still remembered. I came as soon as I knew, he began, his voice a gravelly attempt at explanation. You came, I interrupted, my voice steadier now, cold as the stone at my back. You came when the echo of my pain finally grew loud enough to pierce through your crown." He swallowed, the muscle in his jaw jumping. "They swore to me you were dead. They showed me evidence. They showed you what would let you sleep at night, what made the weight of your choice easier to bear." A flash of lightning, brighter than before, illuminated the room in a stark white instant. He saw the thin, worn leather straps still circling my wrists. Not shackles to hold a wolf. Any wolf could break such flimsy things. They were reminders, a ritual, a promise I made to myself to stay contained, to not let the wild, broken thing inside me loose upon the world. "Why?" The word was torn from him, softer than I expected. "You could have run. Even like this, your wolf is swifter than any guard. You could have vanished." I looked at my hands, at the pale scars that mapped my solitude. I tried, once, in the second year. The pull of the bond, even rejected, it was like a hook in my soul. You were across the continent, fighting in the blood sands. I felt you bleed that night. It yanked me to my knees on the cliff path. My wolf would not leave the scent of what she still believed was hers. I met his gaze, letting him see the truth of it. I crawled back, because my loyalty was a sickness even you could not cure. His silver eyes darkened with a pain I had never seen him before. It wasn't the controlled anguish of a king. It was the raw, unguarded hurt of a man. "Saria," he breathed, and my name was a ruin in his mouth. "Don't," I warned, but the fight was draining from me, replaced by a weary dread. "I will tear this place apart," he vowed, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. "And then what?" I asked, a hollow laugh escaping. "A gilded cage in your palace? A pet omega for your court to pity? You renounced me before the goddess and your entire council. Your crown was your choice. Do not come here now playing the rescuer." His silence was my answer. It was the heaviest truth in the room. He set the torch into a rusted iron sconce with a deliberate click. Then, with movements that were strangely ceremonial, he pulled off his heavy gauntlets. He didn't drop them. He placed them carefully, almost reverently on the stone floor at my feet. An offering, a king setting down his armor. "Then take this," he said, his voice stripped of all command. "Not a rescue, a request. Walk out of this tower, not because I order it, because I am begging you." I stared at the gauntlets, then at his bare, scarred hands. My wolf paced beneath my skin, a thin, hungry shadow. Why? The word was a blade. Why beg now, after a decade of silence? He should have spoken of strategy, of borders, of threats. A king always had reasons, but his eyes held only a bleak, honest truth. "Because your scent found me," he whispered, "in the rain. I followed it through the ruins of everything I've built these 10 years. It is the only thing in this entire cursed kingdom that has ever smelled like home." My breath hitched, a tiny traitor's crack in the ice around my heart. He saw it. He did not push. He simply stood, waiting, letting me feel the heat of him, the raw, unshielded ache in his scent. Below, in the courtyard I couldn't see, there was a clatter of hooves, a shout. The tower seemed to lean, listening. Cassian's head turned slightly, a wolf catching a distant sound. "We must go, now, before the council's hounds realize I ignored their safe route." A bleak smile touched my lips. "You came without permission, the mighty Alpha King acting on his own." "I came without their shackles," he replied, his gaze returning to me. "It seems a better way to live." From a hidden seam of his boot he drew a knife,
not a jeweled dagger, but a hunter's blade, simple and sharp. He reached for the leather strap on my left wrist and paused, his eyes asking a silent question. After a moment that stretched between us, I extended my arm, palm up, offering the ritual of release to the man who had once performed the ritual of rejection. The knife whispered through the old leather. The strap fell to the floor, a dead thing. The second followed. The sudden freedom on my skin was shocking. My pulse hammered against my veins, a loud, living drum in the quiet. I saw his throat move as he swallowed, his own blood singing in answer. He stood, and the space between us felt charged, ancient. For a single dangerous breath, the room didn't smell of dust and rain, but of warm cedar and a summer night that belonged to another lifetime, a life we burned to keep a throne cold. The stairwell groaned, a deep, unsettling sound. "We are not alone," I murmured, my senses stretching. "We are never were," he said, moving to the door with the fluid grace of a predator. In the dark corridor, he tapped the hilt of his knife against the stone, a pattern, a code. From the darkness below came 3 answering taps, metal on stone, loyalty, his. "2 of my guard I trust with my life," he quietly said. "The rest would sell their loyalty for a council seat. They'll use the old laws to try and drag you back. I am prepared to break those laws." "Breaking laws is easy for a king," I said, gliding to the threshold. "It's breaking faith that kills a pack." He accepted the words like a soldier accepts rain, because he deserved to be wet. We began our descent. The torch spat and flickered, our shadows leaping like giants on the walls. My breath fogged in the cold air. He didn't touch me, but I felt his presence at my back like a shield.
On the first landing, a figure materialized from the dark. Jarek, a veteran with a scar like a river delta down his cheek. "My king," he said, the title tense. His eyes shifted to me, and something in them softened, aged with sorrow. "My lady." "Jarek," I said, my voice quiet, "still wearing your guilt like armor." "Someone had to," he replied, stepping aside. "The east wall is blind in this storm. We rope down. The council's spies are sniffing around the north gate." Another shadow resolved into a woman, Ilara, small and fierce, her braid a tight whip down her back. She shoved a bundle into my hands, sturdy boots, a thick, weather-worn cloak, practical, not elegant. "Kept them oiled," she said, her voice gruff to hide the emotion. "Hoped you'd need them, hoped I'd be wrong." I didn't thank her with words. I pulled on the boots, wrapped the cloak around my shoulders. The fabric was heavy, real. It settled on me, and something shifted inside, a subtle realignment, the posture of a wolf who remembers the weight of the earth beneath her paws, a silent reclaiming. We reached the east parapet. The storm attacked with renewed fury, rain like needles, wind trying to tear the very stones loose. A dark, coiled rope was anchored to an old notched stone. Cassian moved to secure it. "I go first." "No." The word was quiet but absolute. I stepped forward, my palms feeling the rough hemp. I looked over the edge into the roaring dark, at the white fury of waves far below. If this is a rescue, I refuse it. If it is an escape, I will lead it. Before he could argue, I swung over the edge, my body remembering an agility I thought was lost. I slid into the storm's embrace, the rope burning through my hands, the wind screaming past. For a heart-stopping moment, I was nothing but falling shadow. Then my boots hit the lower ledge. "Clear," I called up, my voice carried away by the gale. He followed, a dark shape against the night, then Jarek, then Ilara, and then we ran. The cliff path was a treacherous gash in the mountain's side. The storm was our ally and our enemy, hiding us, trying to kill us. My senses, starved for so long, burst open. I could smell the rain on each type of stone, hear the scuttle of creatures in the brush, and I heard the wrong sound. A boot scuff out of rhythm, the faint sour tang of poison on a crossbow bolt. "Down!" I hissed, and we all dropped as one. A bolt thwipped through the rain where Cassian's head had been. I was already moving, my mind mapping the scents. 2 in the scrub to the left, 1 on the higher switchback, a 4th behind the boulder that smells of moss and fear. They're not pack, they smell of clove and rot. Mercenaries. Cassian's sword cleared its sheath with a soft, deadly sigh. Jarek melted left, Ilara vanished right. I didn't need a weapon. I pulled the wind, twisting the sense of the hunters back upon themselves, choking them with their own concealed malice. 1 rose, gagging, and Cassian was there, a swift, silent motion. No cry, just the end of a threat. The last man broke and ran downhill. My wolf, starved and furious, gave me speed. I cut him off, stepping into his path. He skidded to a halt, his eyes wide with terror in the flashes of lightning. In that moment, I let him see the wolf in my gaze, not the shift, but the ancient, wild thing that lived behind my human eyes. He threw his blade away. "Mercy, lady," he gasped. I considered him, the rains soaking us both. Tell your master the tower is empty. Tell him the scent he thought he could trap has learned to hunt. He stumbled backward, then fled into the storm. Ilara reappeared, wiping her knife. You always did have a talent for making men question their choices. Choices have consequences, I said, turning back to the path. Let's move. We pushed on until the cliff path widened into the ruins of an old watchpost, a broken platform of stone clinging to the mountain. Cassian lifted a hand. We halted. Below, the valley unfolded, a dark bowl dotted with the distant, hateful lights of the keep, and to the south, other fires bloomed. Wrong fires, in wrong places. Black banners, heavy with rain, snapped in the wind. An enemy camp. And moving between the tents, figures with satchels that bled a sharp chemical stench into the air. I inhaled, sorting the complex tapestry of scents, and I went cold. "What is it?" Cassian's voice was tense. "They're not just an army," I whispered, horror dawning. "They're perfumers, alchemists. They're burning herbs that mimic grief, smearing wolves with false memories. They plan to flood your patrols with the scent of their own lost loved ones, to make them open gates for ghosts." Jarek cursed, a low, vicious sound. "That's not warfare. That's desecration." "It's effective," Ilara muttered. "Who fights when their heart is breaking?" Cassian looked to me, his king's mind grappling with this unseen weapon. "We can't return to the keep. The council would use this to lock you away again, call you an omen, call me mad for believing you." I nodded, my eyes scanning the northern peaks where the mountains grew tall and silent. We need a place that remembers older laws, a place untouched by their lies. "Where?" he asked, already deferring to this new, sharpened version of me. I pointed north, the Whispering Stones, the Howl Forge. Jarek sucked in a breath. "Old ground, cursed ground, some say." "Good," I said, a flicker of my old defiance returning. "Let the old curses fight the new poisons." Cassian gave a single decisive nod. "We go." As we turned our backs on the kingdom and began to climb into the raw spine of the world, the storm began to ease, as if the sky approved of our rebellion. Ancient pines rose around us, their scent clean and sharp, washing the taint of the false grief from our lungs. And deep within me, my wolf pressed hard against my skin, yearning for a shape denied for 10 long years. I stopped walking. Cassian stopped with me, a mirror to my stillness. He didn't speak.
He gave me the silence, let it fill with the truth I had to voice. I haven't shifted, not once, in 10 years. If I try now and fail, the shock could break her forever. If I succeed, she may not want to come back to this human shape. The wild might claim me. His answer came without a heartbeat of hesitation. "Then I will run beside you," he said, his voice grave and sure, "in whichever shape you choose to wear." I looked at him, at the king who had set his power at my feet, who had followed me into the storm, who now offered to follow me into the unknown of my own soul. He was not innocent, he was not safe, but in this moment he was true.
I closed my eyes. I let go. The first tremor was a release, like a breath held for a decade. The second was a transformation, bones singing an older song. The world dissolved into sensation, sound into scent, sight into texture, thought into instinct. There was no fear, only a glorious, terrifying falling upward into what I was meant to be. I landed on 4 paws. The wolf stood where the woman had been, lean, winter-furred, with a streak of twilight along her spine, eyes like liquid gold. I shook myself, and the rain flew from my coat like shattered chains. The forest sighed around me. I felt Cassian's shift, a surge of power, a crackle of energy. His wolf emerged, massive and dark, a storm given fur and fang, scars silvered in the faint light. He did not assert dominance. He bowed his great head low, a deep, respectful dip of one ancient power to another. I circled him once, scenting him, king, storm, regret, resolve. He fell into step beside me, matching my pace. Jarek and Alara, still in human form, fell in behind, their eyes watchful, their respect palpable. Together we ran, through cathedral pines, over granite worn smooth by time, across ice-cold streams that laughed at kings and crowns. We ran until the air thinned, and the trees grew gnarled, and the world felt older, quieter. We crested a final ridge, and there it lay below us, the Howl Forge, a vast natural stone bowl ringed by monolithic standing stones, each carved with runes so old they whispered to the blood. In the center lay a flat black slab, the anvil where, legend said, the first oaths between wolf and moon were tempered. I padded into the circle. The air changed. It became still, charged, listening. The stones seemed to hum a welcome. The wind died to a respectful hush. Cassian shifted back first, steam rising from his skin in the cold air. He did not approach the central stone. He waited to me, the wolf, and waited. I made my choice. The shift back was smoother, a fluid return. I stood as a woman again on the black slab, the cloak settling around me. I placed my palms on the stone. It was cold, but deep within it a warmth answered, a low, resonant thrum. I spoke, and my voice was carried by the stone, by the air itself. Hear me, old laws. I was bound by false words, chained by fear, imprisoned for a crown's convenience. Tonight, I free myself. The hum deepened, vibrating up through my feet. Cassian stepped to the very edge of the slab. He lifted his chin, baring his throat to the cold and to judgment. Hear me, old laws. I rejected a bond written by the moon because I believed a kingdom would fall if I obeyed. I was wrong. I stand ready to pay the price. The wind moved through the standing stones, acquired tuning to a new frequency. The scent of the world poured into the circle, granite and pine, wolf and fear, the distant chemical sting of the enemy's false grief. The old place tasted it all, and it remembered. From the ridge above, a howl pierced the night, thin, artificial, a perfect mimicry of loss.
It reached the edge of the Howl Forge and then unraveled, dissolving into nothing, rejected by the truth of the stones. I looked north, my senses stretching. They will come for this place. They will want to silence anything that can tell truth from lie. Cassian's eyes were like shards of winter sky, lit from within by a vow. Then they will find their lies met with tooth and claw. Jarek grinned, a feral sight. Ilara cracked her knuckles. I turned to Cassian. There was no forgiveness in my face, but there was decision, a path chosen. "You will not command me," he replied. "I will not even ask to. We hunt," I said. "We hunt," he agreed. Above us, the moon finally broke free from the storm clouds, bathing the whispering stones in pure silver light. The Howl Forge thrummed once, a deep approving note that shook the ground. Far to the south, in the camp of our enemies, a scent warden dropped his vial, confused as his carefully crafted grief scent turned to ashes in his bowl. And in the ancient circle, an Omega who refused to be broken and an Alpha who refused to kneel stood side by side. Their breath plumed in the cold air, two streams destined to become one storm. They turned their faces to the coming dark, and the night waited.
I nodded, a heavy sickness in my gut. And if we don't stop the source, every pack from here to the silent sea will tear itself apart chasing phantoms. Ilara, who had been checking the perimeter, approached, her face grim. Then we find the distillery, cut the head off the serpent. The scent trails lead north, I said, my inner compass pointing unerringly, to the swamplands, to Redfen. Jarek, sharpening a blade by the cold fire pit, snorted. Redfen, the drowned graveyard? Nothing good has ever come from that bog. It's not a bog, I corrected softly. It's a burial ground, a place of old bones and older sorrows. That's where they're drawing their ingredients, using the remains of our kind to fake their essence. Cassian's eyes went flat, dangerous. We move today. We left the sanctity of the Howl Forge as the false dawn bled into a grim, gray morning. The world below was unnaturally still. No birdsong, no chatter of forest life. Even the rivers seemed to run quieter, as if afraid to speak. We traveled light and fast, 4 shadows moving with a grim purpose through the silent pines. Cassian walked ahead, every sense alert, his guilt a sharp scent beneath his resolve. I moved beside him, my own senses stretched to their limits, parsing every shift in the wind. The space between us was no longer just filled with our past, it was charged with a shared, terrible mission. By midday, we reached the ridge overlooking Redfen. The swamp sprawled below like a diseased lung, black water, skeletal trees, ruins half swallowed by sucking mud. A sea of poisonous fog shifted and coiled as if it were alive. And the smell. Decay, yes, but underneath that same cloying, sweet synthetic scent, stronger here, almost overpowering. I breathed through my mouth, fighting nausea. The source is here, deep in the ruins. We descended into the gloom. The swamp embraced us with wet, clinging arms and the stench of rot. But cutting through it, unmistakable, was a new scent. Delicate, floral, haunting. Lilac. Cassian froze beside me, his entire body going rigid. "That's impossible," he breathed. I knew. His mother, the late Luna, had always worn the scent of lilac. She had died of a fever when Cassian was just a boy, long before the wars, long before me. Her scent should have faded from the world decades ago. "They've gone beyond graves," I said, my voice hollow. "They're plundering memory itself." His expression turned to stone, but his eyes burned. This ends now. Jarek, scouting ahead near a collapsed archway of black stone, signaled. Tracks, 4, maybe 5, carrying something heavy in a sealed container. I knelt beside the impressions in the mud. I closed my eyes, letting my fingertips hover above the ground, reading the scent signature left behind. It was wrong. Hollow. I murmured. Not men, not fully. Wolves, but empty. Vessels. Before I could explain, the fog in front of us shivered. It parted, and figures walked out. My breath caught in my throat. I knew that face. Kalen, Cassian's first commander, his foster brother, who had died holding the line at the Battle of Black River Pass so Cassian could retreat. He stood there in iron blood armor, his smile gentle, just as I remembered from the one time I'd met him. Cassian, the figure said, and the voice was perfect, a warm baritone tinged with familiar amusement. Brother, you look like you've seen a ghost. Cassian took an involuntary step forward, his sword lowering. Kalen? You left me there, the phantom said, its smile fading into an accusation. You took the living and ran. You let the crows have me. Don't listen, I warned, my wolf snarling. It's a reflection, a lie. But the scent, gods, the scent was Kalen's. Sweat, steel, oak moss, and the faint hint of the honey cakes he loved. It was perfect. It wrapped around Cassian, a sensory prison of guilt and love. You called me brother, the illusion whispered, stepping closer. You buried an empty coffin. Cassian was trembling, his knuckles white on his sword hilt. His wolf was howling inside him, torn between the joy of seeing a lost packmate and the horror of the unnatural truth. The thing reached a hand towards him. I moved. I lunged between them, throwing my arms wide. My power was not of force, but of truth. I focused at the core of my being, my scent, my soul, the unbroken truth of who I was. I pushed it outwards in a silent, explosive wave. The air shimmered. The false scent of lilac and honeycake met the raw, honest aroma of wild honey, frost, and defiant survival. For a moment, they warred. Then the lie began to burn. The phantom's face contorted, its form flickered like a reflection in disturbed water. It let out a soundless scream and dissolved into a cloud of glittering, foul-smelling dust. Cassian stumbled back, dropping to one knee, gasping as if air had been stolen from his lungs. The grief, now real and his own, hit him in a crushing wave. I knelt beside him, my hand on his heaving shoulder. They used your love against you, I said, my voice soft but fierce. Don't let them win twice. He looked up at me, his silver eyes stormy with pain and a dawning, furious resolve. I won't. The swamp around us seethed. From the deeper gloom, a scream ripped through the air, not human, not wolf, but the sound of 1,000 stolen memories twisting in agony. My wolf bared her teeth. The heart of it is close. Cassian arose, pulling strength from some deep, untouched well. Then we cut it out. The ruins opened into a vast, natural amphitheater, now transformed into a laboratory of nightmares. The pit in the center glowed with a sickly green phosphorescence. Tables lined the edges, cluttered with vials, burners, and macabre tools. Bones, some noticeably wolf, lay sorted in piles, and in the center of it all, standing over a bubbling cauldron, was a figure shrouded in a dark, hooded robe, the scent warden. He did not look up as we entered. "Ah," he murmured, his voice a sibilant rasp, like silk dragged over stone. "The prodigal Luna and her pentient king. We wondered when you would arrive. The distress signals from your emotional echoes were quite loud." Cassian stepped forward, his blade pointing at his heart. "You defile the dead."
I liberate them from oblivion, he corrected, finally turning. His face was pale, gaunt, his eyes a strange, colorless gray. Scent is memory, King. Memory is power. You, of all people, should understand. Your throne is built upon the memories of the dead. I snarled, the sound more wolf than human. You're poisoning the very soul of our kind. He smiled, a thin, bloodless stretch of lips. No, child, I am perfecting it, removing the messy, unpredictable element of free will. Imagine a pack where every wolf is content, every memory is pleasant, every bond is manageable. He raised a hand. From the shadows of the pit, shapes emerged, dozens of them. Wolves with pelts of swirling mist and eyes of blank, glowing green.
They moved with an eerie, synchronized grace, and the air became thick, suffocating, a cacophony of 100 different, perfect, heartbreaking scents. The air of a lost nursery, a first love, a fallen parent. The pressure was immense, a psychic assault designed to shatter the mind with longing. Cassian's voice cut through the sensory storm. "Saria, I'm here!" I shouted back, forcing my truth to the surface. We moved as one, not with a plan, but with an instinct older than strategy. Cassian became a whirlwind of silver and fury, his sword a blur as he shattered vial after vial, each one bursting with a scream of released energy. The false wolves lunged, and he met them, his movements brutal, efficient, driven by a rage that was pure and clean. I did not fight the illusions. I unwove them. I darted through the chaos, my focus laser sharp. I would find the core scent in a phantom, the note of lavender that was a fraction too sharp, the trace of oak moss that was too perfect, and I would pour my own scent into that flaw. My wild honey, my frost-kissed pine, my unbroken will. The lies could not withstand the truth. They burst into showers of harmless, scented dust. The warden shrieked in fury, hurling vials of concentrated emotion. One shattered at my feet, releasing a wave of such profound, manufactured despair that my knees buckled. I saw visions of Cassian turning away again, of the tower door closing forever, of a life of endless gray solitude. "You are nothing without your pain," the warden hissed inside my mind. I clenched my teeth, pushing up from the ground. "Then I am everything," I gritted out and lunged for him. He was faster than he looked. He sidestepped, a long, bony hand shooting out to grab my wrist. His touch was ice cold, and a jolt of psychic violation shot through me, a torrent of other people's stolen grief, anger, fear. Cassian saw. With a roar that shook the cavern, he threw himself between us, taking a vial meant for me directly on his chest. It didn't shatter. It absorbed, and he staggered, his face contorting with a foreign, implanted agony. "Cassian!" The distraction was all I needed. I tore my wrist free and slammed my palm not against the warden's body, but against the air in front of his face. I didn't hit him. I released the full, unfiltered scent of my 10 years in the tower. Not just the sorrow, but the stillness, the patience, the fierce, unkillable hope that had grown in the dark like a root through stone. The scent of endurance. It was the antithesis of his chaotic, stolen emotions. It was solid, real. He screamed, a raw, human sound of terror, and clapped his hands over his face. "No, it's too quiet. Make it stop." His control shattered. The remaining phantom wolves dissolved. The green glow in the pit died. The warden collapsed to his knees, sobbing, overwhelmed by the simple, monumental truth of a single, unbent spirit. Cassian, shaking off the last of the false pain, stood over him, sword poised. "Who sent you? Who commands this abomination?" The warden looked up, tears cutting through the grime on his face.
His colorless eyes were wide with a fear that was now entirely his own. The council, he choked out. The High Council of Elders. They said we were saving the packs, purifying the bloodlines, removing unpredictable elements. His gaze flicked to me, filled with a dawning horror. Starting with her. The words hung in the suddenly still air. The bubbling cauldron had gone silent. Cassian's face was a mask of cold, deadly fury. The council, he repeated, the word a curse. I felt the truth of it settle in my bones. My imprisonment wasn't just about hiding a rejected Omega. It was about hiding a witness, someone who could smell their treachery on the wind. They were never protecting the kingdom, I whispered, the final piece clicking into place. They were farming it. Cassian lowered his sword, but the danger in him had only intensified. Then we have been fighting the wrong enemy. We left the broken warden in the ruins of his workshop. The swamp already seemed to be reclaiming it, the black water rising. As we climbed back to the ridge, the first true light of dawn began to pierce the gloom. But from the north, from the direction of the distant capital, a new scent drifted down on a contrary wind. Familiar, clean, authoritative. The scent of polished stone, old parchment, and cold, deliberate power. Someone from the council, someone Cassian had trusted. The war for the kingdom was over. The war for its soul had just begun. Chapter 4. The Council of Whispers. The sun that rose after Redfen was a pale, wary thing. It cast long, accusing shadows from the blackened swamp trees, as if the land itself were pointing north, towards the seat of our betrayal. We moved swiftly, silently, a knot of grim purpose winding through the foothills. The clean scent of the high pines did little to wash the taste of chemical lies from our mouths. Cassian walked like a man marching to his own execution, his profile etched in stone. The revelation had not surprised him, I realized. It had confirmed a deep, buried suspicion. I was a fool, he said, his voice low, meant only for me as we navigated a narrow game trail. I let them guide my hand, heard my grief. They made your absence a convenient truth. They made your presence a threat, a living Omega with a claim on the Alpha King, someone who could smell their deceit on the wind. He glanced at me, his silver eyes shadowed. You should hate me more for my blindness. Hate me? I shook my head, watching a hawk circle high above. Hate is a luxury I couldn't afford in the tower. What I feel is clearer now, its purpose. By dusk, the terrain hardened into the bones of the world. Jagged peaks clawed at a sky stained the color of a fresh bruise. The air grew thin and biting. And there, nestled in the cruel embrace of the highest mountain, lay the Eyrie, the council's fortress. It wasn't a castle, it was a declaration. Spires of glass and obsidian speared the clouds, defying the mountains that birthed them. Smoke, too white and odorless to be from any honest fire, drifted from slender chimneys. I stopped on a wind-scoured ledge, the gale tearing at my cloak. I closed my eyes and inhaled, the complex scent map of the place unfurled in my mind. Incense, thick and cloying, meant to mask, polished metal, cold stone, and beneath it, faint but unmistakable, the sweet sour tang of distilled essence, the bottled souls of wolves. They're burning Omega essence in the sanctums, I said, my voice tight with disgust. My father's council, the wisest elders of every major pack, guardians of tradition. He spat the last word like poison.
Jarek shifted his weight, scanning the sheer cliffs below the Eyrie. 12 scent wards on the main approaches. The guards will be chosen for weak wills and strong obedience. They won't smell us coming. They'll only smell what the incense tells them to. Alara grinned, a sharp, dangerous flash of Keith. Then let's give the incense something new to sing about. Our plan was not one of force, but of misdirection. We used the last of the warden's foul chemicals, daubing them sparingly on our clothes, the scent of sanctioned grief, of approved sorrow. To the wards and the brainwashed guards, we would smell like mourners on a pilgrimage, come to the eyrie for spiritual cleansing. The great gates, etched with scenes of benevolent council rule, swung open at our approach. The guards and their pristine white armor didn't look at our faces. They inhaled, nodded to the acceptable scent of sorrow, and waved us through. The interior was a masterpiece of sterile oppression. White marble floors reflected the cold light of glow crystals. The air was so heavily perfumed it felt thick, soupy. Wolves in simple gray robes moved with silent, synchronized steps, their eyes downcast, their personal sense utterly buried under the blanket of incense. It was a world without smell, and therefore without truth. My skin crawled. My wolf pressed against me, agitated by the sensory void. Cassian walked beside me, his kingly mask perfectly in place, but I could feel the simmering fury in the tightness of his shoulders. We descended, level by level, into the heart of the mountain. The incense grew stronger, the air warmer, humming with a low, sub-audible vibration. The hallways became plainer, the doors heavier. We were reaching the sanctum. At a vast, circular door of black iron, we were halted by 2 elders in silver-trimmed gray. Their eyes, pale and assessing, scanned us. The cleansing rituals are complete for today. Return to the contemplation halls. Cassian stepped forward. He did not speak. He simply let his alpha aura roll forth, not in challenge, but in stark, undeniable presentation. He was the king, and he was here. The elders' eyes widened. They bowed deeply, confusion warring with ingrained obedience. "My king, we were not informed of your visitation. The council is in session. They cannot be—" "They will see me," Cassian said, his voice leaving no room for argument. It was the voice that had commanded armies. The elders faltered, and with a shared nervous glance, they began the laborious process of unsealing the great door. It swung inward without a sound. The chamber beyond took my breath away, and not with awe, with horror. It was vast, domed, lit by the same ghostly glow crystals. In a circle around the room, on high-backed thrones of white stone, sat the 12 high elders. Their robes were platinum, their faces ancient and serene, but my eyes were drawn to the center of the room. A pool of iridescent liquid glowing with its own soft light shimmered on the floor. Tendrils of incense smoke coiled down into it from vents in the ceiling. And around the pool, on low altars, stood rows of crystal vials, each containing a swirling, luminescent mist, omega essence, the captured scent memory of a living wolf's soul. One of the elders, a woman with hair like spun moonlight and eyes of frost blue, was speaking. Her voice was melodious, reasonable. "The instability of the unbonded Omega line is proven. Their scents are too variable, too emotional. They disrupt the harmonic balance of the pack mind. The new formulation, drawn from the purest sources, will allow for a serene, unified consciousness. The Alpha King's recent divergence only proves the necessity. His bond, had it been completed, would have been a catastrophic flaw." Cassian stepped into the light, his boots echoing in the terrible silence. "A flaw, Alara?" He used her name, a deliberate stripping of her title. The council froze, all heads turned. The serene masks slipped, revealing shock, then a rapid calculation. "Cassian," the elder, Alara, said, recovering with impressive speed. A gentle, disappointed smile touched her lips. "You come unannounced, and you bring contamination into the sanctum." Her pale eyes flicked to me, and a ripple of distaste went through the seated figures.
Contamination? Cassian's voice was dangerously soft. You mean the living, breathing Omega, whose essence you have been stealing, whose sisters you have been harvesting like a crop? A male elder with a long white beard leaned forward. You speak of things you do not understand, my king. This is higher work, the preservation of our species. The unattached Omega scent is chaos. We are creating order, a permanent, stable harmony. You are creating slaves, I snapped, my voice ringing in the domed space. I could not hold my silence longer. You drain the heart from our kind and call it peace. You locked me away not because I was dangerous, but because I could smell what you were doing. The council stared at me. My scent, wild and untamed and furious, was a shock in the sterile room. It clashed violently with the perfumed air. Elder Alara's smile vanished. The rejected one speaks. Your pain has twisted your perception, child. We sought to spare you a world that would have hated you. We gave you peace. You gave me a tomb. I took a step forward, my hands trembling not with fear, but with a righteous, boiling anger. Cassian moved to stand beside me, a wall of solid fury. You will not touch her. The battle in the sanctum was unlike any other. It was not fought with brute strength alone. The thralls were fast, immune to pain or fear, their minds erased. They fought with a terrifying, empty efficiency, and the elders from their thrones began to chant. The incense thickened, pouring into the pool of essence. The glowing liquid began to churn. A wave of psychic pressure hit us, an overwhelming manufactured feeling of wrongness, of deep shame, and the urge to submit. It was aimed at Cassian, a hammer blow to his alpha nature.
He staggered, gritting his teeth, his sword arm trembling. I knew what to do. I couldn't fight the thralls, but I could fight the lie. I ran to the edge of the essence pool. The elders' eyes tracked me, their chanting rising in pitch. "You want harmony?" I shouted over the din. I pulled my knife, the simple hunter's blade Cassian had given me. I drew it across my palm, my blood rich with the scent of a free Omega, of 10 years of silent defiance, welled up and fell in heavy drops into the iridescent pool. The reaction was immediate and violent. My scent was the ultimate contaminant. The pool hissed and smoked. The perfect, stolen harmonies within it shattered, screaming into discord. The incense swirling above recoiled as if struck. The psychic pressure on Cassian vanished. With a roar of liberation, he surged forward, his blade a whirlwind as he disabled thralls, not by killing, but by shattering the vials of control scent on their belts. The council's serenity broke. Panic flashed across ancient faces. Elder Elara rose from her throne, her hand diving into her robes. But a new sound filled the chamber, a deep, grinding tremor coming from the mountain itself. The glowing crystals flickered. From a shadowed arch behind the circle of thrones, a figure emerged. He was tall, draped in a robe of living shadow that drank the light. His scent hit me first, old frost, stone dust, and a terrifying, absolute authority. Then his face became visible as he pushed back his hood. Cassian froze, his sword dropping a fraction. His face went ashen. "Father?" The word was a punch to my own gut. Theron, the previous Alpha King, Cassian's father, dead and buried for over 15 years. The man, the ghost, smiled. It was a cold, familiar expression I'd only seen in portraits. "Hello, son. You've been busy troubling your betters." Elder Alara bowed her head deeply. "My lord Theron, the catalyst has arrived, as you foresaw." Theron's eyes, silver like Cassian's, but infinitely colder, settled on me. "The flawed Omega, the key. Her blood is the final component, the last variable in the great equation." He looked back at Cassian. "You were always too sentimental, boy, too much like your mother.
A king needs to be a force of nature, unburdened by heart. I tried to teach you. Now I will simply replace you." He raised a hand, the mountain's tremor intensified, the black veins in the marble floor began to glow with crimson light. The sanctum wasn't just a room, it was the focal point of a vast, ancient ritual, the blood oath, and we had walked right into its heart. Cassian stared at the ghost of his father, betrayal and horror etching his features. The war wasn't against a foreign enemy, or even a corrupt council. It was against his own bloodline, against the very foundation of his throne. Theron's smile widened. "Welcome to the true inheritance, Cassian. It's time to become what you were always meant to be." Chapter 5. The Ghost in the Blood. The world narrowed to the space between Cassian and the specter of his father. The hum of the mountain, the chanting elders, the hiss of the corrupted essence pool, all of it faded into a distant white noise. There was only the scent of grave dust and cold ambition, and the shattered look in Cassian's eyes. "You're a memory," Cassian said, his voice hoarse. "A trick. My father died. I held his ashes." Theron took a step forward, his shadow robe rippling. "Ashes are for the forgotten. I allowed the world to think me dead. The transition required solitude. A king reborn must shed his mortal attachments, starting with the weakness of the heart." "This was your plan?" Cassian's knuckles were white on his sword hilt. "Fake your death? Let the council poison our kind? For what? Power you already had?" "Stability." Theron's voice cracked like a whip, echoing with a depth that wasn't entirely human. "Eternal stability. Wolves are beasts of emotion, of messy bonds and chaotic loyalties. I saw it weakening the kingdom, so I founded the scent-crafting doctrine. We would refine the wolf, remove the volatility, create a perfect harmonious pack mind with an eternal king at its center, me, and after me, a worthy successor, untainted by sentiment." His eyes burned into Cassian. "You failed. You formed a true mate bond with this." He jerked his chin at me. "A wild, unbiddable thing. It would have made you vulnerable. It would have made the throne vulnerable. So I instructed the council. They orchestrated the rejection. They isolated the flaw. And when the time was right, we would harvest her unique, resilient essence to perfect the final elixir, the one that will bind every wolf's scent to the throne forever." The cold, logical horror of it settled in my bones. My entire life, my love, my pain, my imprisonment was just a step in a monstrous recipe. I was not a person to them, I was an ingredient. Cassian was shaking, not with fear, but with a rage so profound it was silent. "You used me. You made me break her to serve your machine?" "I guided you towards your destiny," Theron corrected, "and now you will fulfill it. Your body is strong, your bloodline is pure, but your will is compromised, so I will take the first, the second will follow." He extended a hand, and the glowing crimson veins in the floor pulsed towards Cassian. "The blood oath requires a living king to anchor it. You will be my vessel, boy, and through you I will live again and rule forever." "No." The word was mine, quiet but absolute. I stepped between Cassian and the specter of his father. "You will not have him." Theron's laugh was a dry, rasping sound. "Little Omega, you have spirit, I grant you. It will make your essence all the more potent." He flicked his fingers. The scent-bound thralls who had been standing inert suddenly converged on me. Not to kill, to capture. Cassian moved. His sword flashed not at his father, but at the thralls, carving a space around me. "Saria!" Cassian's cry was raw with panic.
I did the only thing I could think of. I stopped fighting the thralls. I went utterly still. I closed my eyes and dove inward, to the core of my being, to the quiet, unshakable place I had found in the tower. I found my scent, not the surface notes of honey and pine, but the deep, resonant truth of it, the endurance, the watchful silence, the hope that grew in darkness. I pulled it all to the surface and let it bloom. In the sterile, perfumed air of the sanctum, my scent exploded like a supernova of life. It was the smell of a seed cracking stone, of a wolf howling into an endless night simply because it must. It was the absolute, defiant opposite of their controlled harmony. The thralls holding me jerked as if electrocuted. Their blank eyes flickered. The uniform, hollow scent on them wavered, and for a second I caught the faint, buried signature of who they had been: a farmer, a soldier, a mother. They stumbled back, confused, hands to their heads. The elders' chanting faltered. The crimson light dimmed. Theron hissed, a sound of pure annoyance. "Silence her." But the distraction was enough. Cassian scrambled to his feet. He didn't charge his father again. He looked at me, and I saw a desperate plan form in his eyes. He gave a sharp, almost imperceptible nod toward the bubbling, corrupted essence pool. I understood. If my blood could disrupt it, maybe more could destroy it. As Theron turned his attention back to Cassian, I broke away from the disoriented thralls and ran for the pool. An elder moved to intercept me, but Ilara was suddenly there, tripping the old wolf with a swift, low kick. "Go," she grunted. I reached the pool's edge. The iridescent liquid was still smoking from my earlier blood, churning angrily. I didn't hesitate. I slammed my bleeding palm down into the liquid, and I poured my will into it. This is not harmony. This is theft. This is a prison. Be free. I didn't know if it would work, but I felt something, a resonance. The stolen essences in the pool were echoes of living wolves. They had been subdued, twisted. My scent, my unbent will, was a key, a call to remember. The pool didn't just hiss, it screamed, a psychic shriek of 1,000 muted voices finding a channel. A geyser of multicolored mist and raw emotion erupted from the center. The crystal vials around the edge shattered in unison. The wave of released energy hit Theron. He staggered, his shadow form flickering, the crimson light feeding him, stuttering. "No!" he bellowed, a real note of fear in his voice for the first time. Cassian saw his opening. He didn't use his sword. He dropped it. He lunged forward and wrapped his arms around the flickering form of his father, not to attack, but to contain. "I reject your legacy," Cassian growled, his voice thick with pain and love and fury. "I reject your perfection. I choose the chaos. I choose the heart." Theron writhed, trying to pull away, but Cassian held on with the strength of a son finally saying no to a tyrant. The crimson light, severed from its source in the pool, began to reverse its flow. Instead of going into Theron, it began to drain from him, snaking back into the mountain. And as it left him, it pulled at his very substance. "You fool!" Theron raged, but his voice was fading, becoming thin. "You'll doom us all! You need me!" "We need to be free," Cassian whispered, his face buried in the disintegrating shadow. With a final, silent implosion, Theron's form collapsed, not into ash, but into a rush of cold wind that sighed through the sanctum and was gone. The crimson lights in the floor died completely.
The silence was absolute. Cassian fell to his knees, empty-handed, panting. The elders were staring, their faces masks of utter loss and terror. Their god had failed. Their life's work was a swirling, dissipating mist in the air. Jarek and Ilar quickly secured the doors, rounding up the broken elders and the dazed thralls. I went to Cassian. I touched his shoulder. He was trembling. "He's gone," he said, not looking at me. "He's gone," I affirmed. But as the words left my mouth, I felt a wrongness, a sudden, sharp pain in my own chest, right over my heart. I gasped, clutching at it. Cassian looked up, alarmed. "Saria?" The pain was intense, burning, but it wasn't just physical. It was a presence, a cold, familiar darkness, but now it was inside, not out. I looked down at my wrist, where the ghost of the mate bond had once tingled. The skin was unmarked, but I felt a whisper, a sliver of ice in my blood. Theron was gone, but in destroying him, in being the catalyst, had I taken something of him in my own? Or had his final act been to plant a seed? Cassian saw the understanding dawn on my face. He stood, his hands coming up to cradle my face. "What is it? What's wrong?" I met his eyes, the fear a cold stone in my gut. "He's not gone," I whispered, my voice trembling. "He's in the blood, my blood. The oath, it's not broken, it's just changed hands." The sanctum, for all its ruined glory, felt like a new, more intimate prison. We had won the battle, but the war had just crawled under my skin. Chapter 6. The Unwilling Vessel. The descent from the Eyrie was a blur of cold stone and colder realization. We moved like ghosts ourselves, leaving the shattered council and their broken rituals. No one pursued us. The heart of their power had been stilled, and what remained was likely tearing itself apart in confusion and blame. But the true battle was now inside me. A deep, unnatural chill had root in my bones, a cold that no cloak or fire could touch. It pulsed in time with my heartbeat, a slow, deliberate counter-rhythm that felt alien, wrong. And with it came whispers. Not voices, not exactly, more like intentions, flashes of cold, calculating thought that were not my own, a desire for order so absolute it bordered on annihilation, a disdain for the messy chorus of individual sense around me. Cassian walked beside me, his presence a solid, warm anchor in the growing storm of my internal winter. He watched me constantly, his silver eyes shadowed with a worry deeper than I'd seen before. He could smell it, the change. "Tell me," he said as we made camp in a shallow cave, the first snow of the high passes beginning to swirl outside. I huddled close to the small, smokeless fire Jarek had built. "It feels like a splinter, but made of ice, in my soul. When I close my eyes, I don't see his face. I feel his perspective, the world through his eyes. All the sense of the forest, of you, of Ilara, they feel like noise, chaos to be sorted and silenced." Cassian's jaw tightened. He tried to jump to me. The oath sought the king's blood, but you were the catalyst. Your blood was in the pool. It created a bridge. He ran a hand over his face, weary to his marrow. "I did this. I led you into that chamber." "We went together," I corrected sharply. "This is his doing, his last spiteful move." She'd been listening. "Old legends say it's a living spell. It wants to bind a king and the land. It used Theron's will as its mind. Now that will is adrift in you. It's trying to use you to find a new anchor." "A new king," I finished, the chill in my chest deepening. It wasn't seeking Cassian.
It saw him as flawed, compromised by me. It was seeking something else, or it was trying to turn me into the anchor itself. That night, the whispers grew stronger. I dreamed I was standing in the Howl Forge, but the stones were made of ice, and the moon was a dead white disk. A figure approached, not Pharaon, but a faceless king of frost and silence. It reached for me, and I felt no fear, only a vast, calm certainty that this was right. This was order. I woke with a gasp. My skin sheened in cold sweat that froze instantly in the cave air. Cassian was already awake, holding me, his warmth a furnace against my back. "You were murmuring," he said, his voice rough with sleep and fear. Words in the old tongue, words of binding and silence. "It's getting stronger," I choked out. "We fight it," he said, his arms tightening. "Together." "But how do you fight something that lives in your blood?" In the days that followed, as we traveled north toward the only place I thought might have answers, the ancient libraries of the Moonsinger sect, the duality became my existence. I was Saria, who loved the wild scent of the pines, who felt a fierce protectiveness for my small, battered pack, and I was the vessel, who viewed that love as a vulnerability, who saw the pack as a disordered system to be managed. The moments of clarity were the worst. To feel your own thoughts being slowly, insidiously rewritten. Once, when Jarek laughed at a joke Ilara made, a sudden, irrational fury spiked in me. Silence the discord. The thought was cold, clear, and not my own. I physically flinched, clamping my mouth shut until the urge passed, leaving me shaking. Cassian saw it all. His helplessness was a tangible scent, sour and sharp. He tried to help, flooding my senses with his own stable stormfire scent, reminding me of who I was. It worked for a time. His presence was a lighthouse in the fog of the Oath's will. But the fog was thickening. We reached the valley of the Moonsingers on the edge of a bitter frost. The sect lived in dwellings carved into great stone trees, petrified forests from an age before wolves. They were historians, keepers of lore, and they were neutral to a fault. They would offer sanctuary and knowledge, but no allegiance. An elder named Lyra, with eyes the color of a misty morning and a scent of dry parchment and lavender, met us. She listened to our story without a flicker of surprise, as if the madness of kings was just another chapter in a very long book. "The blood oath is not a spell to be broken. It is a pattern, a song the land learned to sing through royal blood. You cannot unsing it. You can only change the melody." "How?" Cassian demanded, leaning forward. "How do we change it when it's using her as its instrument?" Lyra's ancient eyes settled on me. "The oath seeks a king's will to direct it. It found a fragment of Pharaon's, and it found you, a vessel of immense will, forged, I think, in a tower of silence. It's trying to merge the two, to make your will its own, or to make itself your will." She paused. "You must do what Theron never could. You must master the oath, not with his cold control, but with your own nature." "My nature is being buried," I said, my voice thin. "Then you must dig," she replied simply. "The oath is connected to the deepest magic of this land, the ley lines. It draws power from them. You must go to a place where those lines are exposed, where the song of the land is loudest, and there you must face the pattern and remake it in your own image, or be remade in its." The Heartstone, Cassian said, a note of dread in his voice. It's the center of the Whispering Plains. It's where the first kings were crowned. It's the nexus. Lyra nodded. It is the amplifier. If the oath's pattern is a whisper in your blood now, there it will become a scream. You will either harmonize with it or be dissolved by it. It was a terrible choice. Slowly be consumed on the road, or rush to the place where consumption would be swift and absolute. But within the horror, I felt a spark, my spark, a defiance that was purely Saria. If I was going to be a vessel, I would not be one for a dead king's malice. I would be a vessel for something new, or I would break. We go to the Heartstone, I said, before Cassian could argue. The journey across the Whispering Plains was an ordeal. The land was flat, treeless, covered with tall silver grass that sighed incessantly, living up to its name. The sky was a huge, oppressive bowl, and inside me, the oath grew stronger with every step toward the nexus. The coldness spread. My own scent began to change, the wild honey drying out, the pine becoming frost brittle. I started speaking less, my emotions flattened. I caught myself analyzing our group's defenses, not with concern, but with tactical coldness. Jarek and Alara gave me a wider beard, their sense tinged with a new, wary fear. Cassian never left my side. He talked to me relentlessly about things that didn't matter, the shape of the clouds, the habits of the grassland hares, old memories from his childhood before his father's influence turned dark. He was pouring the fuel of his life, his memories, his warmth, onto the guttering flame of my identity. The night before we reached the Heartstone, the conflict within me erupted. We were camped by a rare rocky outcrop. The whispering of the grass was a maddening chorus. The oath's voice in my mind was clear, logical. These wolves are liabilities. Their loyalty is emotional, not logical. To secure the new order, the unstable elements must be removed, starting with the Alpha. He is the primary source of your distraction. I looked at Cassian, who was checking the perimeter. In that moment, the love I felt was viewed through a lens of icy contempt, a weakness, a flaw in the system. My hand went to the hunter's blade at my belt. The movement was calm, deliberate. The oath's will flowed through me, smooth as frozen oil.
Elara, sharp-eyed as ever, saw. Her body tensed. Saria? Cassian turned. He saw my face, my hand on the knife. His own face didn't show fear, but a profound, heartbreaking sorrow. He didn't reach for his sword. He took a step toward me. Saria, he said, my name a plea and an anchor. Listen to me. This isn't you. This is the ghost in the machine. Fight it. Eliminate the distraction, the oath insisted, its logic unassailable. Tears, hot and shaming, sprang to my eyes. They were my tears, a crack in the ice. I can't, I whispered, the knife half drawn. It's so strong. It makes sense. It's a lie. Cassian took another step, now within my reach. He was utterly vulnerable. It makes sense of a dead world. You are life, Saria. You are growth and wild things and stubborn hope. You are the seed in the stone. Remember the tower. Remember the silence you turned into strength. That strength is yours, not his. He was flooding my senses with his scent, stormfire, passion, unwavering belief in me. It clashed violently with the oath's sterile cold. The conflict was agony. I was being torn in two. With a cry that was both despair and fury, I did the only thing I could. I reversed the knife and pressed the point against my own chest, over the icy knot of the oath. Then I'll cut it out, I sobbed. No! Cassian was on me in an instant, his hands closing over mine, stopping the blade. We struggled, not with anger, but with a desperate, shared agony. "You don't fight a song by killing the singer," he gasped, his forehead pressed against mine. "I'm here, I'm with you. We face it together, tomorrow. You and me, not the oath, not the king. Saria and Cassian." His words, his warmth, his scent, they finally broke through. The oath's voice receded, snarling in frustration. The cold remained, but the blinding clarity of its command faded. I went limp, the knife falling from my nerveless fingers. Cassian caught me, holding me as I shuddered with dry, wrenching sobs. I had almost lost. I had almost become the weapon that destroyed the last good thing in my world. Held in his arms, the whispering grass around us, I made a vow to myself. Tomorrow, at the Heartstone, I would not fight the oath. I would not try to destroy it. I would do something far more dangerous. I would try to understand it, and then I would try to sing it a new song. Chapter 7. The Song of the Stone. The whispering plains gave way to a depression, a vast, shallow bowl in the earth, and at its absolute center stood the Heartstone. It was not what I expected, not an altar or a throne. It was a jagged, irregular spire of pure, smoky quartz, twice the height of a man, thrusting from the ground, as if the earth had once coughed up its own crystal heart. The air around it hummed, a physical vibration I could feel in my teeth. The silver grass did not grow here. The ground was hard, packed earth, scored with faint, glowing lines that pulsed with a soft blue light. Ley lines, the world's veins converging here. The oath in me awoke. It was no longer a whisper or a chill. It was a resonance, a deep, pulling chord that matched the hum of the stone. The icy knot in my chest flared, sending ribbons of cold through my veins. My senses sharpened to an unbearable degree. I could see the individual currents of energy in the air, smell the age of the stone, a scent of deep time and immense pressure, and I could hear it, the song. It was beautiful and terrible, a slow, stately, harmonic progression that spoke of order, cycles, permanence. It was the song of a mountain growing, of a continent shifting, of seasons turning with predictable grace. It held no mercy, no passion, no joy, only the flawless, endless turning of the wheel. It called to the oath in my blood, and the oath answered, yearning to join that perfect, unchanging rhythm. I stumbled, my knees buckling. Cassian caught me, his arm around my waist. "I can hear it," I breathed, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. "Hear what?" Yerrick asked, eyeing the stone with deep suspicion. "The land," I said. "It's singing, and it wants me to sing along." We approached the stone. With every step, the pressure increased, both physical and psychic. The oath's influence surged, smoothing my fear, calming my heartbeat. It was preparing me for union. "Stay back," I told the others, my voice taking on a strange, echoey quality. "This is my path." Cassian's grip tightened. "Your path is my path." I looked at him, and for a moment I saw him as the oath saw him, a brilliant, chaotic flame of will and emotion, a fascinating but dangerous anomaly. The love I felt was a point of acute vulnerability. The oath whispered that to achieve perfection, I must let that go, become like the stone, unmoved, eternal. "No," I said, to both him and the voice inside. "Your path is beside me, but you cannot walk in my blood." I gently pried his arm away. "Trust me." His silver eyes searched mine, looking for Saria in the growing crystal sheen he saw there. He must have found her because he let go, taking a step back, though every line of his body was tight with readiness. "I am here," he said again. The promise was a lifeline. I turned and walked the final distance alone. The ground was warm under my bare feet, the ley line energy tingling through my soles.
I stopped before the heartstone. My reflection in its multifaceted surface was distorted, fractured. I placed both palms against it. The world vanished. I was no longer in the plane. I was in the song. Vast, harmonic structures of light and sound surrounded me. I saw the history of the land flow past, volcanoes birthing mountains, glaciers carving valleys, forests rising and falling, and through it all, the steady, unwavering pulse of the ley line song. And I saw where wolves had entered the melody, a sharp, bright note of wildness, then another, and another, until they formed a complex, vibrant counter-melody to the land's slow bass. The first alphas were conductors, trying to harmonize the wild song of the pack with the deep song of the earth. The blood oath was their tool, a binding cord meant to anchor the two. But over generations, the meaning had been corrupted. Kings like Theron tried not to harmonize, but to dominate, to force the wild, beautiful chaos of the pack song into the rigid structure of the earth song, to turn a chorus into a single controlled note.
I stood at the nexus of the two songs, the oath vibrating within me, trying to tune me to the cold, perfect frequency of control. "This is peace," it sang to me. "This is order. This is forever." And it was so seductive. To let go of the pain, the fear, the constant, exhausting struggle of being a feeling creature in a hard world. To become a timeless part of something vast and unchanging. The cower had taught me silence. This offered the ultimate silence. I felt myself beginning to dissolve into the harmony, my individual notes stretching, thinning, ready to be absorbed. Then a new sound pierced the grand symphony, a single, clear, vibrant note. It was raw, it was alive, it was slightly off-key from the perfect progression. It was the sound of stormfire and pine. It was Cassian. In the vision, I turned. I couldn't see him, but I could hear him. He was howling, not a song of the earth, but a song of the wolf, of the heart. It was a song of battle and forgiveness, of loyalty and mistake, of a love that refused to die even when it was rejected. It was messy, it was flawed, it was breathtakingly beautiful. His song wrapped around me, a tether of pure, defiant life. The oath recoiled from it, dissonance screeching, silence the anomaly. But I listened to Cassian's song, and I remembered my own. The 10-year silence in the tower hadn't been an empty void. It had been a deep listening. I had learned the song of patience, the melody of hope that grows in the dark, the rhythm of a heart that beats, alone, waiting. I had my own song to sing. I stopped trying to resist the oath. Instead, I opened myself to it completely. I let its pattern flow through me, understanding its structure, its purpose. And then I began to sing back. I didn't sing the song of control. I sang the song of the seed in the stone. I sang of wild honey and frost-kissed pine. I sang of a bond rejected but not broken. I sang of a pack, not as a mindless unit, but as a tapestry of individual howls, woven together by choice, not command. I sang Saria's song. My melody met the oath's rigid structure and did not break against it. It insinuated. It found the spaces between the notes of control and filled them with life. It took the binding cord and bent it, not to shackle, but to connect. Where the oath sought to eliminate dissonance, my song celebrated it as the source of beauty and strength. The conflict was immense. The vision around me shuddered, the harmonic structures trembling. I felt the oath's will, Theron's will, fighting back, trying to reassert its cold order. It was a battle of symphonies. But I was not alone. Cassian's song grew louder, blending with mine, strengthening it. And then, faintly, I heard others, the brave, loyal note of Jarek, the fierce, bright chord of Alara, and further the distant, hopeful songs of every wolf who dreamed of freedom. The pack song in all its chaotic glory was rising. We were not harmonizing with the earth song by force. We were creating a new, third song, a partnership, a conversation between the wild heart of the wolf and the ancient bones of the world. With a final resonant chime that shook my very soul, the oath's pattern transformed. The icy knot in my chest didn't shatter, it melted, flowing into my bloodstream, not as a separate will, but as a new understanding, a power, the power to hear the song of the land, and the power to answer it not as a subject, but as a partner. The vision faded. I collapsed forward, my forehead resting against the cool, now quiet surface of the heartstone. The humming in the air was gone. The ley-line scars on the ground had faded to mere faint marks. I was drained, empty but clean. The cold was gone. In its place was a warm, steady hum that was entirely my own, yet connected to everything. Hands grabbed my shoulders, turning me. Cassian's face, etched with fear and awe, filled my vision. "Saria, speak to me." I smiled, a real, weary Saria smile. My scent, once again wild honey and pine, but now with a new, deep note of rich earth and clear sky, washed over him. "I heard you singing. You were off-key." A choked laugh escaped him, and he pulled me into a crushing embrace. "You were magnificent," he murmured into my hair. I held on to him, listening. The whispering plains still sighed, the wind still blew, but beneath it, if I focused, I could hear the new song, our song. It was fragile and new, and it would need to be sung every day to stay alive. We had not broken the blood off, we had redeemed it. But as we helped each other up, ready to leave the Nexus, I felt a tremor, not in the ground, in the song, a distant, dissonant shriek coming from the far north, a note of pure, hungry oblivion that had been awakened by the change in the melody. The land's song had a new counterpoint, and it was not a wolf. The peace we had just bought was already ending. Chapter 8. The Howling Dark. The silence after the Heartstone was profound, but it was not peaceful. It was the held breath before a scream. We traveled north, driven now by a new urgency, the dissonant shriek I heard in the song. It pulled at the edges of my new awareness, a psychic splinter. Cassian trusted my instinct without question. The old dynamics of Alpha and Omega were gone, washed away in the crystal song. We were simply Saria and Cassian now, two wolves walking towards a gathering storm. The landscape grew bleaker with every league. The silver grass of the plains gave way to a scrubland of thorn and brittle gray moss. The sky became a perpetual twilight, not from clouds, but from a strange smoky haze that dimmed the sun. The air lost its scent. It was neutral, sterile, as if something had sucked the very essence of life from it. My new connection to the land song twinged with pain here. The melody was thin, frayed, sick. "Where are we?" Alara asked, her voice hushed. She sniffed the air, frustrated. "I can smell nothing, not earth, not decay, nothing." "The Blightlands," Jarek said grimly, his hand resting on his axe haft. "A dead zone on the old maps. No packs, no game. Stories say the land was cursed in a war so old even the stones forgot." "It's not cursed," I said softly, kneeling to touch the brittle ground. "It's empty. The song here is an echo. The life, the scent, the spirit of it has been consumed." "Consumed by what?" Cassian scanned the gray horizon, his senses straining against the void. The answer came not with sight or sound, but with feeling, a profound, hollow hunger. It washed over us, a psychic tide that had no scent, only a sensation of immense, ancient need. It came from the north.